She discovered an outlaw with an arrow in his back. Dawn brought $5,000 bounty hunters to her door. The first light of dawn stretched slowly over the horizon, turning the desert sky into soft shades of pink and gold. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of dust and sage. Lila walked briskly along the cracked dirt path leading from her family's ranch. She had always been an early riser, used to starting her day before the sun fully appeared. Her small boots crunched on the rocky soil as she carried a jug of water to her father's livestock. The ranch was quiet at this hour, the only sounds coming from the occasional wind that swept across the barren hills and the distant hum of a hovering wagon delivering supplies to the nearby town. Lila's eyes were sharp, accustomed to noticing every detail of the landscape. That morning, as she rounded a bend near an old rock formation, something unusual caught her attention. A faint shimmer in the distance, like the glint of metal, flickered for a moment. Curious, she slowed her pace and squinted against the rising sun. At first she thought it was a rock reflecting the light, but as she got closer, the shape became clear. Lying half hidden in the sand and sparse brush was a man. His body was still, but the subtle rise and fall of his chest told her he was alive. An arrow, strange in design and glowing faintly with a blue hue, was lodged in his back. Lila's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had seen accidents before, horses falling, travelers caught in sudden sandstorms, but never anything like this. The man was not wearing ordinary clothing. His jacket shimmered slightly as if woven with some strange material, and a small device on his wrist blinked in patterns she didn't understand. Careful not to startle him, Lila knelt beside the man. "Hey, can you hear me?" she asked softly. His eyes flickered open, revealing a pair of gray eyes filled with pain but also a spark of awareness. He tried to speak, but a low groan escaped instead. Lila took a deep breath and gently helped him sit up against a rock. "Don't worry, I'm going to help you," she said. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. She had never dealt with anything like this before. "My name is Lila. What's yours?" The man's lips moved, but no words came out. He pressed his fingers against a small holographic device on his wrist. A soft glow expanded in the air above him, forming a miniature map with blinking markers. Lila leaned closer, intrigued. She had seen technology in passing, hover wagons, solar cookers, and communication devices, but this was unlike anything she had ever encountered. The hologram pulsed and shifted, then vanished as if sensing her gaze. "It's okay," Lila whispered. "You're safe for now." She glanced around the desert. The town was a few miles back, but she knew they couldn't go there. Not yet. If the man had enemies, she didn't want them following them into town. She needed a safe place, somewhere hidden, where she could help him recover. Her father's old shack, abandoned for years at the edge of the ranch, came to mind. It was small, dusty, and quiet, but it would do. With care, she helped the man to his feet. He leaned heavily on her shoulder, and she noticed the arrow seemed to hum softly, as if powered by some energy inside it. "We need to get you inside," she said. Slowly, she guided him across the desert floor. Every step was cautious. The sun was rising higher now, and the desert heat began to grow. Lila's mind raced with questions. Who was this man? Why was there an arrow in his back? And what was that strange device? When they finally reached the shack, Lila set the man down on the old wooden floorboards. Dust swirled in the air as she closed the creaking door behind them. She went to a small cabinet and pulled out clean cloths, water, and herbs she had grown for minor injuries. Carefully, she began tending to his wound. The arrow itself was unlike any she had seen, made of a metal that seemed almost liquid, shifting colors faintly. She couldn't remove it. She knew that could be dangerous, but she cleaned around the edges and tied a cloth gently to stabilize it. "You're going to be okay," she reassured him. "I'll stay with you." The man's breathing was slow but steady now. He pressed a finger to the holographic device again. A small voice, mechanical and soft, spoke. "Encryption active." The man frowned, obviously frustrated. Lila looked on, fascinated. She didn't understand the words, but she realized this device was important. Whatever it contained, it could explain why someone had shot him with that strange arrow. Hours passed as the desert sun climbed higher. Lila stayed close, offering water and speaking softly. Gradually, the man began to speak, his voice hoarse but clear. Jace, he managed.
"Jace. Okay. Jace," Lila said. "Do you know who did this?" He shook his head.
"Chasers, bounty, they'll come." His words were broken, but the warning was clear. Lila's stomach tightened. She had heard stories of bounty hunters before, but never imagined they would come after someone in her quiet desert home. "What do they want from you?" she asked. Jace looked away, his eyes scanning the shack's small windows. "Something I carry, important, cannot fall into wrong hands." Lila nodded slowly. She didn't understand everything he meant, but she could feel the weight of danger in the air. The desert, once quiet and safe, suddenly seemed larger and more threatening. She had to act fast. She moved to a small chest in the corner of the shack and pulled out blankets, herbs, and a few supplies she kept for emergencies. She returned to Jace and helped him lie down more comfortably. "We'll figure this out," she said, determination in her voice. "No one's taking you from here while I'm around." Outside, the desert remained quiet, but a small movement caught her eye, a distant shimmer in the heat haze, almost like dust rising. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know what it was, but she knew instinctively that the warning was real. Bounty hunters, or whoever was chasing Jace, were out there. Lila sat beside him, keeping a careful watch through the small window. She spoke quietly, telling stories about her life on the ranch, about the animals and the quiet town nearby. Jace listened, eyes half closed, occasionally nodding or giving a faint smile. For a moment the tension lifted, replaced by a fragile trust forming between the two of them. As night fell, the desert transformed again. The stars appeared, bright and sharp, reflected in the holographic device that Jace kept close. He studied it silently, occasionally tapping its surface. Lila watched, curious. "Is it a map?" she asked softly. Jace's lips curved faintly. "Part of it," he said, "leads to safe places and secrets." Lila didn't understand fully, but she sensed the importance. Whatever this device contained, it was dangerous enough to make someone shoot Jace with that strange arrow in the middle of the desert. She knew one thing for sure: their quiet desert morning had ended, and a new uncertain adventure had begun. As the wind whispered through the cracks of the shack and the desert cooled under the starry sky, Lila made a silent promise to herself. She would help this man, protect him, and uncover the secrets he carried. Whatever bounty hunters or dangers came, she would face them head on. For the first time, the vast desert felt like the start of something much bigger than the ranch, bigger than her ordinary life. Something that could change everything. And somewhere far off in the distance, faint shadows moved across the desert sand, carrying the first signs of the hunter's approach. The dawn had brought a stranger to her door, and with him, a storm that would sweep across her quiet life. The morning sun stretched across the desert once more, painting the sand in soft shades of gold and amber. Lila had hardly slept, her mind restless with questions. Who was Jace Corvin really? Why had someone shot him with that strange glowing arrow? And most importantly, how could she protect him from the unknown danger that was clearly on its way? Jace sat on the wooden floor of the shack, his back leaning against a rough beam. He was pale but conscious, his breathing steady thanks to the cloth Lila had tied over the arrow wound. The holographic device rested in front of him, pulsing faintly with soft blue light. Lila knelt nearby, filling a small cup with water from her jug and handing it to him. "They're coming, aren't they?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm. Jace nodded, his gray eyes sharp. "Bounty hunters, they never miss. Whoever shot me won't stop until they get what they want." Lila's heart tightened. She had grown up hearing tales of bounty hunters, lawless men who chased fugitives across the frontier. But she had always imagined them in old stories, not hovering in the desert just a few miles from her home. Now, the thought that these hunters were real and closing in on them made every shadow feel dangerous. "What do they want from you?" she asked again, trying to keep her tone calm. Jace glanced at the holographic device. "Information. Something I carry, something they can't let anyone see. It's too important to fall into the wrong hands." He coughed softly and pressed a finger to the device. It hummed and expanded into a small map that showed dots moving across a terrain that looked vaguely like the desert surrounding them. Lila leaned closer, fascinated. "Is this a map?" "Part of it," Jace replied. "Safe places, hidden routes, secrets. Only a few know about them. And now, I've been marked." Lila felt a shiver run down her spine. Her quiet life on the ranch seemed distant and unreal. For years she had cared for the livestock, repaired fences, and watched over her father's land. Now the desert felt alive with danger, and the man she had helped carried secrets powerful enough to change everything. The sun rose higher, and the wind began to pick up, carrying the familiar smell of dust and sage. Lila knew they could not stay in the shack. It was isolated, yes, but not hidden enough. The bounty hunters would be able to find them if they searched. She scanned the horizon through the small window. For a moment, Nothing moved. Then, far in the distance, a small shimmer flickered across the sand, a hint of motion. Her stomach tightened. "They're close," Jace said, reading her expression. Lila swallowed hard. "We need to move. Can you walk?" Jace nodded slowly, but his face tightened in pain. "I can, but I need support." She rose and offered her arm. Together, they left the shack, careful to avoid the higher ridges where they could be seen. Lila led Jace to a narrow canyon pass, a place she knew from exploring the desert as a child. The canyon was hidden from the main road and offered small caves and overhangs where they could rest if needed. As they walked, Jace struggled to keep up, his strength fading with every step. Lila adjusted her pace, her mind racing with ideas. She remembered the small hover wagons used by travelers to cross the desert. If they could find one abandoned or unguarded, it might allow them to move faster than the bounty hunters. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Lila's skin burned slightly from the desert sun, and her throat was dry, but she kept going. Every few minutes she glanced behind her. The shimmer she had seen earlier had grown. Now in the distance she could make out faint shapes hovering above the sand. Small drones, she realized, scanning the desert for movement. "They have drones," Jace whispered, his voice tense. "They're scanning for energy signatures for me." Lila's mind raced. She had grown up with simple tools and animals, not high-tech scanners. But the desert was her ally. She knew every rock, every shadow, every ridge. She led Jace through narrow turns, up and down rocky inclines, keeping the drones out of line of sight. At one point, a drone passed directly overhead, its light scanning the canyon floor. Lila pressed Jace against the rock wall and held her breath. The drone's light passed, leaving only a faint hum in the air. Both of them exhaled slowly. "You're good at this," Jace said, his voice weak but impressed. "I've survived here my whole life," Lila replied, offering a small smile. "The desert teaches you how to hide." By late afternoon, they found a small cave tucked behind a rock formation. Lila helped Jace inside, and they settled down. She offered him some water and a small meal she had packed earlier. Jace ate slowly, watching her with quiet gratitude. "You've done more for me than anyone else ever has," he said finally. Lila shrugged. "I just couldn't leave you out there. Someone needed to help you." He looked down at the holographic device. "It's not just bounty hunters. There's more at stake than you realize. The device, it contains information that could change how people see this world. Dangerous people want it. They won't stop." Lila frowned. She didn't fully understand, but she sensed the weight of his words. This was bigger than she had imagined. Night fell, and the desert became quiet, the stars shining brightly overhead. The moon cast a silver glow on the sand, and the wind cooled. Lila kept watch at the cave entrance while Jace rested. Every rustle of the wind, every shift of sand made her alert. She knew they were not safe yet. Suddenly, a soft hum echoed through the canyon. Lila froze. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Jace opened his eyes. "Yes, the drones are near. They're scanning the canyon." Lila's heart raced. She realized that moving at night might be even more dangerous, but staying put could be worse. The drones could detect energy signatures, heat, or movement. They needed a plan. She thought quickly. The cave had an opening at the back that led to a narrow ledge above the canyon. If they could climb it, they might be able to bypass the drones completely. It would be difficult, especially with Jace injured, but it was their best chance. "Can you manage?" Lila asked. Jace nodded, gritting his teeth. "I can, if you help me." Carefully, she guided him up the ledge. The climb was slow and tense, but her knowledge of the desert rocks helped them find holds and footholds that were sturdy. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of sand and distant blooms. For a moment, it felt like the desert itself was watching, testing them. When they finally reached the top, they crouched behind a large rock, hidden from the drone's view. Lila's eyes scanned the canyon below. The drones moved methodically, their lights sweeping across the terrain, but they did not see the two hidden figures above. "We made it," Lila whispered, relief flooding her voice. Jace nodded, breathing heavily. "Thanks to you. I don't know how I can ever repay you." "You don't need to," Lila replied. "We just need to survive tonight." "That's enough for now." The night passed slowly. Lila kept watch, listening to the distant hum of drones and the soft movements of the desert. Jace rested, recovering as best he could. By morning, the sun rose again, washing the canyon in warm light. The desert felt alive with possibility, and for the first time since their flight began, Lila felt a glimmer of hope. "We need to keep moving," Jace said as he rose slowly. "The bounty hunters won't give up, and the device, It's important we reach a safe place before they find us. Lila nodded. She tightened her boots and adjusted her pack. The desert stretched ahead, vast and uncertain, but she no longer felt afraid. With Jace by her side, she felt capable of facing whatever challenges lay ahead, and so the pursuit continued. Across the golden sands and rocky canyon passes, the two moved carefully, always aware of the distant hum of drones and the faint glint of distant bounty hunters. Each step was a test, each turn a chance to evade capture. But Lila had learned one thing already. The desert was not just a place to survive. It was a place to thrive, to hide, and to protect what mattered most. Somewhere ahead, hidden from sight, lay the next part of their journey, a place where safety and answers awaited. But first, they had to outsmart the hunters, navigate the desert, and trust each other completely. The pursuit was far from over, and the desert promised many more challenges before dawn's first light faded again. The desert sun had barely risen, painting the horizon in muted golds and soft purples. Lila and Jace crouched behind a jagged rock outcrop, watching the distant shimmer of drones as they swept across the canyon below. Their journey had been slow, careful, every step calculated to avoid detection. The desert was vast, but it offered little cover from the high-tech bounty hunters who were determined to find Jace. "We need a plan," Jace said, his voice low. He shifted slightly, wincing as the arrow in his back pressed against the stabilizing cloth. "They're learning our moves. We can't just keep running forever." Lila nodded. She had thought about this too. The desert had been their ally, but now the hunters' drones were methodical, scanning every possible route. Their escape would require more than knowledge of the terrain. It would require creativity, courage, and a little luck. "There's an abandoned mining station not far from here," Lila said, pointing toward a distant ridge. "I've been there before. Broken machinery, old tunnels. It's easy to hide, at least for a while. We could use it as a base." Jace studied her with a faint smile. "Sounds perfect. Let's hope it's empty." The journey to the station was tense. They moved cautiously, sticking to the shadows and the rocky ridges that the drone's lights couldn't reach. Lila guided Jace along narrow paths, carefully choosing each step to avoid loose stones and sudden drops. The desert felt alive with anticipation, the wind whispering through the canyons like a warning. When they finally reached the station, it was more intact than Lila remembered. Rusted metal beams jutted out from the walls, and old machinery lay scattered across the ground. Broken cables dangled from ceilings, and the air smelled faintly of dust and metal. It was quiet, too quiet, but that was exactly what they needed. "This will work," Lila said, leading Jace inside. The station's tunnels offered shade and concealment. "We can rest here, plan our next move." Jace nodded, easing himself down onto a raised platform. He tapped the holographic device again, and a small map projected into the air. Dots moved across it, showing multiple locations and paths. One dot glowed brighter than the others. This is where we need to go," he said. "A hidden colony. Safe. But the path is risky." Lila frowned. "Risky how?" "Drones and patrols," Jace explained. "If we're spotted, they'll follow us all the way. But there's a way through the old tunnels beneath the station. It's tight and unstable, but it avoids most detection." Lila's eyes narrowed. "Then we take the tunnels." The next few hours were spent preparing. Lila helped Jace adjust the stabilizing cloth around his arrow wound while he shared what little he could about the colony. "It's hidden deep in the desert," he said. "Few know its exact location. Safe, yes, but isolated. Perfect for hiding secrets." As the sun climbed higher, the distant hum of drones grew louder. The bounty hunters were closing in. Lila peeked through a crack in the station's wall. 2 drones hovered near the canyon entrance, scanning the terrain below. Their lights swept in precise arcs, their sensors searching for any sign of life. "They're too close," she whispered. "We can't go outside now." Jace studied the map. "We'll wait until nightfall. Then we move through the tunnels. The darkness will give us cover, and the drones won't see us underground." Night fell, and the desert transformed. Stars glittered in the sky like distant lanterns, and the wind carried the scent of sand and wild desert flowers. Lila and Jace descended into the tunnels, the air cool and damp after the dry heat of the day. The path was narrow, and the walls rough and jagged. Every step required care, especially for Jace, who moved slowly to avoid aggravating his wound. The tunnels twisted and turned, sometimes opening into small chambers filled with old mining equipment. Shadows danced along the walls as they passed, and every creak of the old metal echoed loudly. Lila held her breath at each sound, aware that even a small mistake could alert the drones above. At one point they reached a collapsed section of the tunnel. Lila studied it carefully. "We can get through," she said, pointing to a narrow gap in the rocks. "It'll be tight, but it's possible." Jace nodded, taking a deep breath. "Lead the way." They crawled through the gap, the rough rocks scraping their clothing. Lila felt her heart race, but she kept moving, guiding Jace with gentle hands. On the other side, the tunnel opened into a wider passage, leading further into the desert. As they moved, Jace shared more about the device he carried. "It's not just a map," he said. "It contains information, evidence of how powerful groups control settlements across the desert. If it falls into the wrong hands, they can manipulate entire communities." Lila's eyes widened. "Then it's not just bounty hunters. There's something bigger at stake." "Yes," Jace said, "and that's why we can't be caught. Not now. Not ever." The passage eventually opened to a narrow ridge overlooking the desert floor. From this height, Lila could see the faint lights of drones moving below, scanning the canyon for any movement. She crouched behind a rock, watching carefully.
"They're still searching,"
she whispered, "but we have the advantage. They don't know we're above them." Jace nodded, catching his breath. "Good. We stay hidden, then move toward the colony at first light. It's our best chance." Lila felt a surge of determination. For hours they waited in silence, listening to the distant hum of the drones and the soft desert wind. The tension was unbearable, but they had no choice. Every movement could mean discovery. Every misstep could be the difference between safety and capture. Finally, the first light of dawn appeared again. The desert was bathed in soft orange and pink hues, and the drones above had shifted positions, giving them an opportunity to move. Lila helped Jace stand, steadying him as they began their descent toward the next section of tunnels. The descent was tricky, the rocks loose and the slope steep. Lila moved first, testing each foothold. Jace followed, trusting her guidance completely. For the first time, they were not just surviving, they were moving with purpose, a plan forming with each careful step. When they reached the lower tunnels, the air was cooler and filled with a faint scent of minerals. Lila glanced at Jace. "We're almost there. Just a little further." Hours passed as they navigated the twisting tunnels, avoiding unstable sections and carefully testing every step. Their journey was slow, but progress was steady. Jace's strength improved slightly, and the stabilizing cloth around his arrow wound seemed to be holding. Finally, the tunnels opened into a hidden valley, shielded from the desert winds and the scanning drones above. Small plants grew along the edges, and a stream trickled quietly through the sand. In the distance, the faint lights of the hidden colony shimmered. "We made it," Jace whispered, awe in his voice. Lila smiled, a mix of relief and pride flooding her. "Yes, and we're safe, for now." They approached the colony carefully, remaining cautious. The valley was peaceful, a stark contrast to the tense desert they had crossed. Lila felt a sense of calm she hadn't felt in days. The colony offered shelter, safety, and a chance to plan their next move. Inside, the colony was alive with gentle activity. People moved quietly, tending to gardens, repairing solar panels, and checking small communication devices. The technology was advanced but blended seamlessly with the natural desert environment. Jace's device pulsed faintly, syncing with the colony's systems. "This is perfect," Jace said, his eyes scanning the area. "We can rest, recover, and plan. No one can reach us here without being noticed." Lila nodded, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. Their journey had been difficult, filled with danger and uncertainty, but they had persevered. Together they had outsmarted the drones, navigated the desert, and reached safety. As night fell once again, the colony glowed softly under the starry sky. Lila and Jace sat quietly by a small fire, sharing a simple meal. The desert outside was calm, the distant hum of drones gone for now. For the first time, Lila allowed herself to feel hope. They had faced the desert, the drones, and the bounty hunters, and they had survived. The adventure was far from over, but they had proven they could face anything together. And somewhere deep in the desert, beyond the ridge and the hidden valley, the bounty hunters waited, unaware that their quarry had already slipped through their grasp. For now, the confrontation was over, but the desert promised more challenges ahead. And Lila, standing beside Jace, knew she was ready to face them. The desert night was calm, the sky clear and full of stars that shimmered like tiny lanterns above the hidden colony. Lila sat beside Jace on a smooth rock near a small fire, watching the flames dance and listening to the quiet hum of the colony around them. The journey had been long, exhausting, and full of danger, but for the first time in days, they felt safe. Jace adjusted the cloth around his arrow wound. Though still tender, it had stopped causing him pain, and the stabilizing device seemed to be working perfectly. He looked at Lila, gratitude shining in his eyes. "We wouldn't have made it without you," he said softly. "You would have made it too," Lila replied, shaking her head. "But we did it together." "That's what counts." Jace smiled faintly. "I didn't think I could trust anyone out here. But you've shown me that even in a harsh desert, people still care. People still act with courage." Lila looked down at her hands, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had never thought of herself as particularly brave, just careful and cautious, but these past days had taught her something new. She had learned that courage was not just facing danger, it was choosing to help, even when fear ran through your veins. The two of them sat in silence for a while, letting the peaceful night settle over them. Somewhere in the distance, faint lights flickered as the colony's residents went about their quiet work, tending small gardens and checking delicate instruments that measured the desert's energy and resources. This place, hidden deep in the sand and rock, was a sanctuary from the world above, a world where bounty hunters and dangerous secrets lurked. Jace finally broke the silence. "We need to plan our next move," he said, his voice calm but serious. "The device, the information it holds, it's not safe just sitting here. There are people who will never stop trying to get it. We need to secure it, make sure it can't fall into the wrong hands." Lila nodded. "Then we'll do it together. We've come this far. We can handle the rest, too." Over the next few days, Lila and Jace worked quietly in the colony. The residents welcomed them with soft smiles and warm meals, offering guidance without asking questions. Jace shared what he could about the device while Lila helped him recover and learn to navigate the colony's technology. Together they created a plan to make the information safe and inaccessible to anyone who might try to steal it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert, Lila and Jace sat at the edge of the colony, looking out over the dunes. "Do you think the hunters will come?" Lila asked quietly. Jace shook his head. "They might, but we've covered our tracks carefully. We've made it hard for anyone to find us here, and if they do come, we'll be ready." Lila smiled faintly, feeling the sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The desert, once a place of danger and solitude, had become a place of refuge, of strategy, and of hope. She had discovered strength in herself she didn't know existed, and she had discovered trust in someone she barely knew but already respected deeply. As the night deepened, the two walked back toward the colony's center. A small gathering of residents had formed around a fire, sharing stories of survival, innovation, and life in the desert. Lila and Jace joined them, feeling for the first time that they were part of something larger, a community that valued bravery, care, and cooperation over greed and violence. Over the next week, the colony's system synchronized with Jace's device. Data was encrypted and scattered in a network only the colony could access. Jace worked tirelessly, ensuring that the secrets could never be misused, and Lila helped him, learning how to operate the technology and contributing her own observations of the desert landscape to strengthen their security. One afternoon, as the sun rose high and painted the desert in warm light, Lila and Jace ventured to the edge of the hidden valley. From this vantage point, they could see far into the distance, the dunes stretching endlessly, punctuated by the occasional rocky outcrop and distant desert plants. Lila pointed to a narrow canyon in the distance. "We crossed that together," she said softly. "We survived because we trusted each other and used everything the desert taught us." Jace smiled, a rare, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "We did, and now we can make sure no one ever gets hurt over this information again." That night, a quiet celebration filled the colony. Lanterns glowed softly in the open spaces, and the residents shared stories of past adventures and daring escapes, reminding Lila and Jace that even in a harsh world, courage and cleverness could prevail. Lila realized she had grown stronger, more confident, and more aware of the world beyond her family ranch. And Jace, he had found someone who believed in him, someone willing to face the unknown by his side. Following morning, Lila and Jace prepared to leave the colony temporarily, to ensure the device remained safe and to scout potential threats. The residents wished them luck, offering supplies and advice. As they set out across the desert dunes, the sun rising behind them, Lila felt a mixture of excitement and determination. The journey had been dangerous, yes, but they had survived. They had grown. And they had learned that courage, trust, and quick thinking could overcome even the most relentless challenges. As they traveled, Lila reflected on how much had changed. The desert no longer seemed lonely. It was alive, full of lessons and hidden paths. She had discovered not just a stranger in need, but a world of possibilities and friendships that could endure any danger. And she had learned that sometimes the bravest act was simply to help someone when no one else would. Hours passed, and the horizon stretched endlessly before them. They moved with purpose now, confident in their plan and in each other. The bounty hunters, the drones, the danger, they were all behind them. The desert was quiet, the only sounds the whispering wind and the soft crunch of sand beneath their boots. Eventually they reached a high ridge overlooking the desert valley below. From this vantage point they could see the full expanse of the dunes, the hidden trails, and the shimmering horizon where the sun was rising in brilliant gold. Lila felt a deep sense of peace. They had survived the chase, navigated the desert, and secured the secrets. The journey had tested them, but it had also shown them their own strength. Jace turned to her, his gray eyes reflecting the light of the rising sun. "We did it," he said softly. Together, Lila smiled. Yes, together. As they watched the desert awaken, the wind carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and sage, Lila realized that this was not just the end of their journey. It was the beginning of a new chapter. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and the unknown, and had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever the future might hold. Somewhere far away, the faint shadows of the bounty hunters lingered, unaware that their target had already vanished into the safe embrace of the desert. But for Lila and Jace, the world was full of promise, opportunity, and the quiet power of courage and trust. The desert stretched endlessly, golden and free, and for the first time in her life, Lila felt that she was exactly where she belonged, brave, prepared, and ready to face whatever adventures lay ahead, with Jace by her side. And as the sun climbed higher into the sky, it cast a warm light over the two travelers, illuminating the path forward wide and open, full of endless possibilities.